Michael, I know that he describes it in Participatory Economics 1, so I want to, and some people have brought it up, but otherwise I probably wouldn't be discussing it even. Okay, I want to bring up some issues that are going to be the kinds of things that come up when we start talking about it. I know that we don't have a clear picture of what our society looks like. I don't know how to paint one, but what are some issues that are certainly going to come up when we are talking about inter-society affairs or international affairs? In a revolutionary situation, too.
I guess validity, or whether other nations would even acknowledge us as the new revolutionary power. I mean, if we're some new person in power, they can just as easily say, "Well, we don't recognize you. We'd rather deal with you," which doesn't sound reasonable anyway. But I guess collateral or clout, where we can say that we have some sort of.
We have to come up with a collectively understood and accepted means of communicating with these other societies that they're going to acknowledge, but that we agree is the way to do it. Now, I used this delegation example earlier at the regional level, and I'm not sure of a better idea for how to do it once we build up and up. But we are separating ourselves from. Remember, this is now. This points out the other thing about scale. The reason that it isn't so wonderful necessarily to just keep growing and growing and growing is that we do want valuable representation at the highest level, the level before we're considering ourselves. Okay, well we're now talking with another system, and it's very important that we have some sort of participatory input in the system that represents us at that level. So it's a question for us as much as it is a question for our ability to sort of interface and interact between those other societies. So how do we appear to other societies? I think that it's not such a problem when it comes to are they going to respect us and acknowledge us, because no matter what country you're talking about, but certainly especially in North America, we still got a lot that the other world wants or needs or perceives in this way, and we hopefully as a revolutionary movement, as a revolutionary society, are going to perceive ourselves as maybe owing a little bit to the rest of the world. The idea, and I think I mentioned this in a couple of the Part 1 classes, but the idea that we might grow to a certain point and say, okay, well, and I mentioned in my talk yesterday, I think, what are we going to do? Just shut down everything and say, well, we don't want to oppress the world anymore, we don't want to be involved in imperialism, so we're going to just hold on to everything that we've taken from the rest of the world and let them fend for themselves. We are going to be actively involved in certain ways, and hopefully respectful ways, but we're going to need an ability to do that, to reach out to other societies.
How do you tackle the idea of a military?
I'm getting to that. I'm going to get to that.
Because we should be assuming that if anything successful, it's not going to be global and all at once. So we're going to be at war with right-wing regimes.
Maybe not. I actually have a tendency to. Well, we're going to talk about military in just a second.
Aren't we beyond, with our assumptions? Aren't we beyond hopefully that we'll be respectful towards other societies? Yeah.
Because we're revolutionary, and because in all these other spheres, we're a new kind of people.
So we're not hopeful that that'll be the case. It just will be.
I think if we accomplish most of this, then right? Yeah, okay, fair enough. We're assuming that we will be.
I guess my fear is if in a hypothetical situation, there's a situation like this in the U.S., and the rest of the world is still capitalist, another country will fill the power void inevitably and take over the role that we play now, and will intervene in our internal affairs like we've done in so many other countries. I fear that could happen. Oh no, the U.S. has turned communist or whatever.
Right.
We have to take on the role as the world's.
Well, when we talk strategy in Part 3, we're gonna definitely discuss scale of the actual movements. Okay, and we're gonna think about what is the likelihood or what are the potentialities and where do we need to focus in order to ensure that there is much broader change than just in the U.S. The first thing to do is going to be able to recognize the perspective that suggests that we could do it here and that other people are just going to sit by and watch. Or even, we need to take it this far. The reason that people seem to be sitting by and watching, if we look at it from one angle, is that we're not even noticing what's going on underneath the boot print that we've got on everybody's neck, right? So the changes are already brewing in so many other places. But that doesn't mean that no matter, I think with our highest hopes, there are going to be some societies that don't go through revolutions at the same period or even in the same general period that we are, that might be behind the revolutions in the United States. Some that will be ahead, some that have already been ahead. Okay, but particularly because we're talking about the vision of our new society, when we've started to establish this, what about a nation like Singapore? Singapore is a nation that is fairly well isolated, that is very conservative and very reactionary, even compared to us, and that may be behind, simply because power at the grassroots level in Singapore is so much less at this point and for the foreseeable future than what we actually have in a country like this, that there are going to be differences. That doesn't mean that a revolutionary movement isn't going to be building there, but how do we relate to revolutionary movements in other countries once we've sort of begun to establish our vision here and sort of achieve our vision here in our own?
I think, sorry.
Go ahead.
There are lessons from the 60s. I mean, you look at the whole world was changing during that period, due in part because students everywhere were seeing each other and sort of building on each other's movements. And I think it would seem to make sense that if you know, the top banana or whatever starts to sort of make these great changes, that everyone else is going to see that and be inspired, or we'll get inspired from, like you said last night, the thesis.
Right.
There's change to be done.
So what do we do when we've started to establish ourselves here, and these other movements are in full swing? But what's the problem? I mean, why isn't it obvious that of course we're just going to do whatever any movement in any other country requests of us? And, you know, we'll send military aid, we'll send whatever rebel movements or revolutionary social movements are requesting. Material, you know, and then not education and not a heck of a lot of things that they're probably not going to request, but in cases that they might, send whatever they ask for. Why not?
I don't know.
That's what we do now.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. We have to actually have the ability to come up with criteria. Just because someone says I'm a revolutionary movement and requesting something, but as soon as we start coming up with criteria, that's almost worse. This gets to be a headache.
There also is the idea that you had that we shouldn't be seeing ourselves as either the reactionary or the radical vanguard, and that we should be hoping that they do it relatively independent of any of our support, because that makes it, do you know what I mean?
Well, that'd be nice. It's kind of shitty, right? I mean, we have all these resources and all this privilege to start out with,
That we stole from other people anyways.
which we stole from them. So when they ask for help later, we say, well, you know, we did it mostly on our own, and we don't see why you shouldn't, you know. And I'm certainly not suggesting any of us have this perspective, because sometimes we skip a beat and go, oh my God, you know, like, what are we really thinking about? What are we really proposing here if we're not stopping and really pausing and thinking about it?
I mean, for me, I'm kind of going on the assumption that we would have a non-interventionist policy, especially regarding military and stuff like that. And I mean, if a country wanted resources that we have and were able to provide, then that would be something different. But I think that's very separate from, I mean, if a revolutionary front requests arms from us, I mean, that's what we're trying to get away from. I mean, I would see us as trying to get away from all of that. And economic resources, that would be something totally different. But again, it would have to be in a very non-interventionist way, that, you know, the conditions aren't attached to it and things like that.
Yep.
But I also see, I mean, yeah, maybe not every country is going to change, but I mean, as things are changing, there's revolutions going on all over the world in a lot of different ways already.
But aren't a lot of them false and just provoked by the U.S. anyway?
Well, I mean, a revolution is a radical change in the structures of social life. It doesn't mean that we support anything that could be defined generically as a revolution. Yeah. So there's a lot of questions here, and they are not easy to solve. These are very, very, you know, these are going to have profound impact. Someday, if we really do this, a lot of the choices that we're going to continue to have, if we're like, you know, right now we're at the kids' table, and we don't even get a chance to make any of these decisions, and we can sit there and point out and criticize U.S. policies around a lot of things, and we can even find once in a while something to say, hey, that was pretty good, I'm glad we did that. I can't remember the last one that I said that about, but I think I remember it happening. And so, but when this is our job, when this is the people's job finally, it isn't going to be easy just because we've got great ways of making the decisions. So these are some of the conflicts that could be looked at as depressing, but we're gonna move to a couple others and start to maybe see that we can at least get a grip on where we might be headed.
Bruce is raised his hand. Don't you start now?
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't.
Go. I'm fine.
Sure. Okay.